teachers. This is an online version of the vertical alignment training. Several of you indicated that it would be better timing for you to be able to take it online at your own pace, and so we wanted to be able to provide that opportunity to you. As you know, there's been a focus on intervention, especially through the Cougar Camp time this year at Crosby, and so this training should serve to kind of help give you a foundation for where to even begin with identifying some of your student needs. It is a part of Crosby's intervention and enrichment series, so there are other trainings planned on this same topic that should be able to help you build on the foundation that we lay together today. So for this training, I'm going to present the information to you like this, webinar style, but then there is also a piece that is in the embedded Google form that as we get to an explore piece of this training, on your own, you're going to need to spend about 20-30 minutes looking through some of those resources and responding to the answers in the Google form. When you submit that Google form as evidence that you've completed the training, I will review it and then we'll award credit in Edugence. So as we begin, I will tell you the parts where we'll pause and be able to look at some of those resources, but we'll start by going through with just the information and the content from the training. So let's go ahead and get started. Live, we would have started with good things, so I hope you have some good things. Right now, you can think of them to yourself. You don't have to share them out loud to a blank room because that would be awkward, but think about some good things and then we'll move on here. All right, so as we're looking here, we're looking at two ends of kind of a spectrum as I see it in your classroom. So your students fall somewhere along this spectrum, and we know that we have students in the classroom who are struggling right now. They're struggling with the content. They're struggling with the grade level expectations. They're just really struggling academically. At the same time, you have students on the other end who are bored. They already know the content. They already know what you're teaching. And so it is your job as a teacher to be able to meet the needs of all of your students. And so how do you do that when you have students with such varying needs? And so that's what we're going to look at today with the vertical alignment is how through intervention for our struggling students and enrichment for our students who've already mastered that concept, how can I meet those needs? Today's training really is going to focus on this struggling end of the spectrum. Again, through our intervention and enrichment series, we want to provide you with some resources to enrich the education of those who aren't struggling. But today we really want to look at and focus on this struggling end in enrichment. And so how do you do that? That's what we're going to look at. Sometimes I get mental images for things, and the mental image I get sometimes for struggling students is this idea of like a leaky bucket. And so you're pouring in the information, you're trying to provide the knowledge, and for whatever reason, the student is not being able to retain that knowledge. They're not being able to fill up their bucket with the knowledge that you're giving. It reminds me of this game. I'm going to move my face here. It reminds me of this game that we play every year at camp. So if you don't know me, I used to work at church camps, and I lived for the summer when I could work at camp. And my husband and I are children's pastors, so we run church camps in the summer too. And we play this game all the time. And what's interesting about this game is I've seen it played with young kids, as are in the pictures here. These are my actual two kids, are the ones without the smiley faces on, covering their face, their identity. And I played it with teenagers. And the idea of the game is that it's like a relay style game. So there's a bucket, it has holes drilled in it. At the other end of a field, there's a bucket filled with water. And kids relay style have to take their sponge, fill it with the water, come back, wring it out into this bucket, and the first team that fills the bucket wins. The catch is that the bucket at the end has holes in it. And so the team has to figure out how to fill the holes while filling the bucket, while running the relay. And what's interesting to me is that a team wins every year. Like, they always are able to fill the bucket. And there's three takeaways that I think apply to academics that I've learned from this game. One, the kids always have to get creative in how they fill the bucket. Like, just the first plan that they have does not help them win the game. The team has to get creative. And to do that, they have to work together. The team has to be working together to be able to accomplish their task. And the other thing that they end up learning is that they have to fill the lowest holes first. And so you can see in this picture, they're holding in the holes at the bottom. We always have kids start holding in some holes at the top and the water's draining out the bottom before they can ever even catch it. And so you have to fill the holes at the bottom, you have to work together, and you have to get creative. And those are the three concepts that I really want to drive home with intervention. So if we're thinking about this idea of a leaky bucket, is for us to fill the students' holes together as a staff, we're going to have to get creative. Just teaching this tier 1 information in the same way we've always taught it is not going to get us what we need in order to fill our students' buckets. 2, we're going to have to work together. The task is too great for us to be able to accomplish it in isolation of each other. And 3, we're going to have to fill the lowest holes first. So what do I mean by fill the lowest holes first? That's what we're going to look at in this vertical alignment training, because vertical alignment is what's going to help you identify and fill the lowest holes first. So if you look at the Teex are designed in some sort of stair step. So if you are a classroom teacher who's only really ever looked at your grade level Teex, you probably have a very good understanding of what's expected to be taught at your grade level. If you kind of pull back and broaden that perspective, you're going to find that those Teex are almost like a ladder. They stair step on one another. There's some foundational grade levels. Kindergarten's a foundational grade level. It lays a foundation, and then first grade builds on it. Second grade builds on that. Third grade builds on that. You see that. I know sixth grade's a foundational grade level for some middle school concepts. Each grade level has some foundational things that they teach, and then other grade levels build on it like a stair step. And if you think of this step analogy, if a student has a hole on one of these bottom steps, it's really hard for them to jump 3 or 4 steps to get the information that you're maybe presenting to them that's on grade level. And so what we have to do is we have to meet them on the step that they're standing on, and we have to help guide them to the level of understanding that they need. And the way we can do that is looking at the vertical alignment of the Teex. So I have a few examples here that I want to look at. In these examples, I'm going to try to show you what it is that I'm talking about. So this first one is a 4th grade standard. It says, retell, paraphrase, or summarize text in ways that maintain meaning and logical order. So students are expected on the start at this level to summarize. And a lot of kids have a hard time summarizing. And I'll use me as an example when I was a teacher. If my kids couldn't summarize at 6th grade, I just gave them more passages to summarize. And sometimes I said it louder, or sometimes I just gave them a different story, and we just practiced summarizing. What I didn't understand at one point in my career is that if a kid can't summarize, I need to drop down and teach some prerequisite skills to help build them to that. So if I look at the way that this builds, look at kindergarten. The students are expected to retell text. So a retelling has all the details and all the character, like everything in the story. And if a kid can remember to retell everything, that's a first step. And then being able to, you see that in 1st grade, they're retelling. In 2nd grade, they're retelling and paraphrasing. So now I'm condensing it a little more. And by 4th grade, I'm able to summarize. If I can't summarize, maybe I need help paraphrasing or retelling. And instead of the teacher presenting this summary in just a different story over and over again, what I might need is for that teacher to drop back down and work with me on being able to retell, and then work with me on being able to paraphrase, and then work with me on being able to summarize. And that's where this Cougar Camp and Winfolder intervention time is valuable to us, because it's the time within the day that we can look at what are the holes that the students need and where do I drop down. I know knowing where to drop down is one of the harder parts. And so looking at that vertical alignment of the Teex shows us what are some prerequisite skills that align to the skill my student's struggling in that maybe I could supplement to help them come to a level of understanding. Another example we have here is, this is a phonics example, and I'm not going to read all of these, but we can see that in kindergarten, the student's expected to read VC, CVC, and CCVC words. And so they apply those spelling knowledge. As we get to 4th grade, you can see that this line of Teex ends up with spelling multisyllabic words and closed syllables, open syllables, VCE syllables, vowel teams, including digraphs, diphthongs, R-controlled syllables, and final stable syllables. If my 4th grader can't do that, then maybe I look at what was expected at 3rd, and what was expected at second, what was expected at first, and what was expected at kinder. And then I can build up to their ability to be able to do that. When you're looking for skills or things to hit in some of your small groups or in your win folders that the students are going to have their folder where it's what they need, looking at where they might have that hole in that alignment can be a valuable place to start to where you're giving them what they need. Let's look at a math example. So in this math example, I have this 4th grade Teex here. You add and subtract whole numbers and decimals to the 100th place using a standard algorithm. So if a student's struggling with adding and subtracting whole numbers and decimals, I want to look at some prerequisite skills. The 3rd grade skill is solving 2-step problems, including addition and subtraction within 1,000. It breaks down all the way here to 2nd grade with solving multi-step word problems involving addition and subtraction within 1,000 with a variety of strategies based on place value, including algorithms. So 2nd grade's more conceptual with a variety of strategies, including an algorithm. So how can I teach that where it's more conceptual? And it builds all the way up to where we're adding and subtracting decimals and whole numbers. If you can't add and subtract within 1,000, it's going to be really hard for you to add and subtract within decimals. And so building some of those foundational skills can help a student be able to access those higher skills. Because if I go back to my analogy of this leaky bucket, if I'm just keeping on putting my fingers in the top holes, the information is still, it doesn't have a foundation to stay in. And so you've got to fill those lowest holes to be able for the student to be able to access and retain the information. We've all seen a student where just what we're saying is just so far beyond what they're able to keep in right then, like it's too difficult. It's beyond, it's at that level of frustration. And so we want to be able to, in that intervention time, drop it down to where they are able to access some of that information. The next one is, this last example is a math example that we're going to look at, and it is 4th grade skill, solve problems related to perimeter and area of rectangles where dimensions are whole numbers. So in 4th grade, they're solving problems with area and perimeter. And if we look down at the 2nd grade skill that aligns with this, we're seeing that they're using concrete models to find the area of a rectangle by covering it with no gaps or overlaps. And you can read the rest there. But essentially, we're helping teach them at 2nd grade the concept of area by filling in the actual perimeter, by laying down some of those units and then counting the units. And it builds from there in 3rd, and it builds up to them being able to solve that with, solve a problem related to that in 4th grade. So if a student's struggling, drop it down to that concept level and see where that is. You can do that by looking at those Teex. On this example, and the previous math example, it doesn't base all the way down to kindergarten, but if you look even in those kindergarten skills, a lot of those are the concepts of composing and decomposing numbers, where even maybe some students need it dropped even down to that level. I will say before we move into this next part of the training, on these examples, if you are a 3rd grade teacher who has a student who is mastering these concepts, you can also look at that going up, those vertical alignment going up, to maybe enrich the student. What would be the next level of what they need? And so that's one just idea of how you could use this for enrichment. Again, we're not going into enrichment today because this mainly is for intervention, but looking at that vertical alignment could also give you some ideas on how to enrich the content as well. I use 3rd grade as an example, but that could apply to any grade level. Okay, so I want to talk too about intervention, and I want to think about a doctor. So a doctor is prescriptive in what they provide. And as educators with intervention, we have to think like the doctor and be prescriptive. A doctor does not provide chemo for a broken leg. They don't give a cast if you have a kidney infection. The response and the intervention has to meet the need. So saying just blanket, well, we're all going to just work on problem solving and we're all going to do the same thing. That's not thinking like the doctor. That's just like saying radiation is a great treatment. We're going to give it to everybody. Well, everybody doesn't need radiation, you know? If I have something that I need radiation, I want that. But if I don't, I don't need that. And so I encourage you to think like the doctor. Be prescriptive in the intervention that you provide. If a student is struggling with their letters and sounds, I want to find the letters and sounds they need to know, and I want to provide them some opportunities to learn that. If a student, in my example earlier, is struggling with summary, I want to see, can they retell? And if they can't, I want to provide them with opportunities to retell. I don't want to just say, hey, we're going to read more because you're going to learn more the more you read. That's like saying, hey, here's a blanket treatment. It's good for everybody. Y'all should just all do it. And really, we're at a point where we need to be able to be more prescriptive to meet the needs of our students. And so I encourage you, as you're looking at some of your data and you're looking to make plans, think of yourself as the doctor and be prescriptive with the interventions that you provide, because you have an opportunity to really help meet a kid's need so that they can be able to access that grade level material moving forward. So how do we do that? How do we use this vertical alignment to intervene? The first one, there's some steps. One, identify the holes. So we're using this analogy of the leaky bucket. Where are the holes? What are the holes? And so you can find those holes by looking at some of your screeners. We have the CLI Engage, the TPRI, we have MAP. MAP will give you some skills. We have DRA. We know that a DRA level, if I look at that literacy continuum, there's some behaviors to notice and support at each level that can show me what are some of the holes that the student had. We have weekly CFAs that are aligned to grade level Teex. And then we have some teacher observational data. Yes, all of those other data points are great, and I am a huge fan of disaggregating data. But sometimes watching a student, an experienced teacher can tell and know what that student might need. And so together, all of those data points help us to be able to identify the holes. I think sometimes of this, one of the levels on the TPRI, it says the student can identify, I think it's 8 letters. Well, if they didn't do well in that, I'm going to look at what are some other letters that they don't know of all of them. Where can I help them? And so using those data points to identify the holes and then identify the needed skill. So now that I see that there's a hole, where can I find what the specific skill is that the student needs? I see what they're missing. I see what level that is. Where can I know practically what skill it is that I can provide and help the student practice, maybe in my small group or in their win folder. So one that you can look at is a Teex vertical alignment, looking at that alignment of the Teex, and I'm going to provide you with some resources to do that here in a minute, and then connecting with that peer knowledge. Remember, we said that you're going to have to work together, and together that's how we're going to be able to accomplish what it is that we need to be able to accomplish. And so working together, being creative, and then being able to look at those specific skills in the ladder of the Teex, those are some valuable ways to help. And then the next step would be to fill the hole. So that could be through differentiated instruction in the classroom, providing resources in the students' win folders, small group instruction, being intentional with who you're pulling and when and what you're doing with those small groups. All of that together speaks to an intentionality towards identifying and then meeting that student's individual needs. And if you can follow those steps, you're going to be a lot farther on the way to helping your students be able to access and master the material that they need. I want to look here. Here's some resources, and I'm going to go through a couple of these so that we can see. So the first one is for ELAR, and it's the Teex guide. If you're not familiar with this website, I am a huge fan of this website. So for those of you who might not know, this year I'm writing some virtual curriculum, and I've been assigned for my part like kindergarten phonics and second grade ELAR and phonics. I taught 6th and 8th grade, and so I've really worked to fully understand the expectations of the Teex at those levels, and this website has been very beneficial to me. So there's 2 subjects on here, ELAR and SLAR. I'm going to go to ELAR, and I'm going to go to 2nd grade because that's what I've been working with most recently, and I'm going to search the Teex. Here you can see every Teex. So I'm going to look at a Teex, decoding words with prefixes including un, re, and dis. So let's see that. So I can click on any Teex. It's going to give me the Teex. It's going to give me specific examples. So this is great because it gives you the people who, this is from TEA. So I believe that it's TEA. This is like a legit source. And so this is their interpretation of their own Teex. And so what you can do is when I'm looking for some examples to use in some of specific skills, I can look here and it's going to give me some examples. It's also going to give me this, well, before I leave this page, there's also some videos that'll help you. And then it's going to give me on this alignment tab how this Teex aligns all the way through the Teex strand. So I can see easily what should they have learned before they got to me and what will they learn next. And so this is where I took the screenshots from my reading examples, because on the alignment piece, it's here. And then there's also a resource piece. And so some Teex do have resources and some don't. There's none here on this one, but some do have some resources. So this is a really valuable website that's going to help you better understand that vertical alignment of the Teex. The next one is this Math Texas Gateway. And so I know we've used this in CLCs last year a lot, but what it does is it I don't feel like it's as pretty as the Teex guide, but you can see this vertical alignment of a Teex all the way across kinder through 6th grade. And so you can Control F to find and search for the Teex you're looking for, and then this document will show you where that aligns all the way through. So again, it's giving you the same information, it's just giving it in a different format. Another one that you can look at is the Teex resource system. It's for math, and it has where you can pull up the alignment that you're looking for and select kinder through 4th grade. And then I can go through and look at the Teex as well. And then this also provides some resources and some specific notes. It talks about the specificity at each grade level with notes and maybe some different examples. So it does have a little more resources than that Teex, that Gateway, Texas Gateway resource, but it's also a math one. And then for both ELAR and math, your lead forward field guides, and that's the screenshot that I pulled for our math examples. In the field guides, they're in your CLC courses through Canvas. They have a lot of information regarding the Teex, regarding what is expected, giving some examples, and then also there is a side of a vertical alignment. So you have those resources to be able to help you fully understand that stair step of learning and the way that the state has scaffolded those standards. And so I encourage you to look at those resources. So here's what you're going to do in this explore part. I want you to pause the video and look at your data and utilize those vertical alignment resources. So really dig in. And instead of just picking random Teex like I just picked, I encourage you to look at something that you know some of your students are low in, or you're thinking of a specific student, or maybe a specific group of students, and look at that and really look at the vertical alignment and brainstorm some ideas for how you can identify some of those holes and then identify some of those needed skills. And so I would encourage you to spend this training, my part's going to be about 25 minutes or so. I encourage you to spend about 20-30 minutes looking through that material, and then make sure that you complete the Google form after you've done the explore piece, because it's going to ask you, what resources did you find valuable? What were some aha moments? Things like that. And so explore those resources with your data and then fill out the Google form. And that will be how you get credit for this training. I'm going to move on, like you pause the video, or like you're coming back to it. But know that I would hope that you would spend about 20-30 minutes on this piece looking at your individual data. Coming up, we're going to have some make and take trainings. And so after this training, you should have been able to identify some skills that your student needs, found the holes, identified some skills, and then in these next, on October 20th and October 22nd after fall break, Hartley and I are going to host some resource make and takes. So this is going to be a time where together, we're just going to facilitate you collaborating and creating some resources to fill some of those holes, maybe some things to put in the win folder, some materials for your small group time. It is not going to be like a teaching time where we're standing there talking to you. It's going to be a time where you can work together with whoever comes to the training, and you make some stuff and you take it with you. And our plan would be to house that in maybe a shared Google Drive where you have access to what everybody is creating. And so maybe we split up that work. Like, my students need this, but I also know that my first grade counterpart needs that as well. And so we're going to share some of those resources in alignment with the Teex. because what we need to do is we need to be creative and work together to help meet those needs. So on October 20th, that's a reading, and October 22nd, that's a math day. Register in Edugent so that you can get credit for that. But we hope to see you there. We hope that that facilitates it empowers you to have some of those materials that you need to actually carry out the work that you've maybe in this training identified that you need to do. And then now I'm going to launch you out. So I don't love cheesy things, and I really don't love cheesy poems, but this cheesy poem always sticks with me, and I really don't like it, but I thought that it was fitting here. And so there is a poem that it talks about a man who's standing on a beach, and he's throwing these starfish back in the water. If you love this, I'm sorry, I shouldn't make fun of it, but he's standing on a beach in it, and he's staring at these like hundreds and hundreds of starfish, and he keeps throwing the starfish back into the water so that they can breathe because they need the water. And a friend's walking with him, and he says, like, what are you doing? You can never throw all of these starfish back. You're not going to be able to save them all. And the man throws the starfish back, and he says, but I can save that one. And the idea or the takeaway is that our beach is full of starfish. And one man's attitude was, I can't save them all, so why even try? Another man's attitude was, I can't save them all, but I can do what I can do to help that one. And while we're looking at the needs that we have, academic needs of our students coming out of this pandemic, even the social and emotional needs that we're seeing, I want you to be like the man who is trying to throw the starfish back that he can. You're going to burn yourself out if you're trying to solve everything and fix everything everywhere. You can't do that. But that doesn't mean that you can't do the good that you can do. And so I want to encourage you to be like the second man, the one who says, yeah, I can't do that, but I can save this one. And so I want you to not beat yourself up for all the needs you aren't able to meet. And I want you to look at, what can I do to help my students? Because the truth is, if you can make a difference in one or two or three of your students, if you can fill some of their holes, what you can do is better than not doing anything because you can't do it all. So I want to leave with this quote that says, I love it. It's by John Wesley. It says, do all the good you can, by all the means you can, in all the ways you can, in all the places you can, at all the times you can, to all the people you can, as long as you ever can. And what I like about that is you do what you can. And together, when we each do what we can, we are able to accomplish a lot. If you look at all of the struggles and you look at all of the things that need to be fixed, the tendency would be to shut down and say, that's too much, and I can't do that. But you can do what you can do. And I encourage you to do what you can, because together, when we each do what we can, we make a huge difference, and we are able to meet our students' needs. We are able to intervene. We are able to make a difference. And you will see that by the end of the year, we will have made huge progress because we've each done what we can instead of letting us get shut down and say, I can't do it all. So I encourage you, do what you can. I know you are doing what you can. I encourage you to stretch yourself, to try to learn what you can to be able to help meet your students' needs. I look forward to maybe seeing you in those October 20th and 22nd trainings. Please make sure that you submit your Google form for this training by Friday, October, I believe that it is the 23rd. It's not fall break, the Friday after fall break. I will be awarding credit after that day to be able to upload that in Edugent. If you need any further support, or you say, I kind of got the concept of what you were saying, but I have a few questions, or I'd love to meet with you to kind of look at my data, I'm still a little confused. Anything that you need, reach out to me. I'm willing to help, and I'm willing to schedule a time that we can meet together, because I want to support you as you support our students. Thank you for joining me for today's training on vertical alignment, and I look forward to seeing the difference that you're able to make in your students moving forward.